Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our podcast, Let's Clear the Air, coming to you here from the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice. I'll be your host, Shani Saez, comms coordinator here, and I'm joined by my co-host, Steven Carretero Cuevas.
Hi there, guys.
Media specialist here at CCAEJ. And today we're joined with two very special guests. You could call them the backbone of this team. They are new additions, and yet they're doing so much for us. They're our fellows, Yvette Vargas and Melanie Robles. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
All right, I'll go first. Hi, everyone. My name is Yvette Vargas. As Shane mentioned, I am a second-year master's student from UC Berkeley's School of Information. I am studying information and management systems with a specialization in data science and law.
Awesome. And Melanie?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie Robles. I'm an incoming sophomore into Stanford University, where I'm studying public policy and environmental science. Here, as part of the CCAEJ team, I'm working on Environmental Justice Summit. And it's been a really great opportunity to meet everyone and also get to meet Yvette, since we're both in the Bay Area and we were both from the Inland Empire. So that's really great.
It's kind of crazy. You guys are both from the Bay, yet you come back to the IE to do your projects. Why is that? What draws you back here to this specific location?
Oh, yeah. So for me, I learned about environmental justice for the first time here. So, of course, we're in an environmental justice community. So where else best than to learn from your own community and have an opportunity to grow alongside CCAEJ, since it's an organization that's so prevalent and impactful here that I just knew that this was a location I would want to spend my summer.
Likewise, I think for me, I just come from the unincorporated area of Fontana, and I've seen so many of the drastic changes and policy implementations that has happened in the last 4 years, and being very much aware of the just the lack of representation in academia from the IE, and just the lack of academic publications, especially in data science. I think it's a really important time for us to establish our identities beyond just the physical space, but also just the academic lens, and just to showcase to all the students who are aspiring to do something with their lives that there's other alternatives, and you don't have to necessarily deny your identity anymore. You know, this is about claiming our identities beyond our physical location. Is about claiming our identities within a classroom, or even just adding the professor name to it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's big. I mean, here in the IE, we deal with a lot of erasure of culture, and a lot of people who are trying to keep us down in the sense of taking away the things. I mean, look at Bloomington, for example. We see a whole community wiped out by developers in the name of same-day shipping. You know, it's really hard to tell people about that unless we have projects like your guys's to help share with the youth, or share via an IT infrastructure. So I want to dig a little deeper into that. Let's go over the projects you guys have been working on in your tenure here. I'll start with Melanie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I also grew up in Rialto, so that's why this community is so important to me. And I knew, thinking about my summer, I wanted to return here and kind of reflect on all that I have learned in school. I feel like I'm in such a place of privilege that I really wanted to share some of those resources, some of that knowledge that I have acquired with my community, and also have the opportunity to, of course, to learn, because it's one thing to learn in the classroom, and it's another thing to really be in community, be at the community events, be at the city council meetings, be in the presence of such amazing organizers. So just thinking about all that, I just thought, what led me to this moment? What led me to want to continue developing my knowledge of environmental justice? And that all came down to this random Instagram account I followed. Just kidding.
I wonder who does that. That guy.
It was a CCAEJ account, and I saw that they posted a 2021 Youth Summit virtually. And during the time, it was in the pandemic. I was home alone pretty much. I didn't have high school in person yet. It was kind of lonely. And I was kind of just deciding what to do with my time. And I saw that they had the Youth Summit, and I was like, oh, let me sign up. So I did, and that was their first ever Youth Summit they held. And that's where I got to meet incredible organizers such as Joaquin, and I also connected with Gabby Mendez, who was a previous CCJ organizer. And
shout out Gabby.
Yep.
She was previously on the pod.
Yep. Awesome people. And that's when I first learned about what is environmental justice, what is happening in the Inland Empire, what is environmental racism, what is community organizing, what is CCAEJ doing to fight against it. And it was incredible and very impactful. And I really do claim that moment to be a turning point in my life. And that's when I got more involved with CCAEJ. That's when I got involved with another partner organization called Youth en Route, because Gabby actually sent me the information and she was like, oh, apply. And I did apply and ended up getting the position as a youth advisory board member. So I was helping Youth en Route like build this other environmental justice coalition for youth specifically across California. And so then that's afterwards I applied to Stanford, and I really wrote about why I want to go to university, like why I want to pursue public policy and environmental science, all connecting to this moment and to CCAEJ. So just thinking about how all that connected to who, it was all connected to CCAEJ and this opportunity, this space to grow. So I knew that I wanted to expand this youth program and come back and develop it further in a vision that I feel like is impactful and continues empowering the youth.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And you're like 18, 19, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, 18.
Yeah, so the youthful power coming from your generation is astounding. And it's great to see us, you know, developing a program to empower these young leaders to then become major like movers and shakers in our EJ spaces, because that's what we need. Right now, we're getting shut down by the previous, you know, tenure, and I think that we need to develop new leaders in our youth and keep them here in the IE and not let them go away to other spaces. I mean, Yvette can probably talk to this, that currently we have a little bit of a brain drain where all of our individuals, especially in the tech industry, tend to leave and go to places like Cupertino or, you know, the Bay,
the Silicon Valley
area. And it's disheartening because we can thrive here as a tech institution, but somehow there are barriers and obstacles that don't allow that. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. Oh boy. How much time do we have for that? You know? Yeah. I mean, I've been arguing this for years. Like, the Inland Empire shows a lot of promise for tech development and tech talent, but I hate to say it, but unfortunately our civil leaders here just don't see the opportunities for our community, especially my generation, to want to stay. As we discussed before, and Shane and Steven and a little bit of Melanie, we talked about like, why is there's just this one industry and it's just purely warehousing? But when we talk about other areas like the Bay Area, for instance, we see a plethora of industries that are thriving. But why is it that the Inland Empire only has this one single industry and we're kind of at a chokehold right now? So that's one element. And then the other element is, right, the students, right? Where do they go to build that tech development, that tech talent? And since there's nothing that's being thriving here, they have to leave. They're going to go where the talent is and where they can thrive. And unfortunately, here in the Inland Empire, there isn't really a platform for that. So for me to be here, it's really just establishing a myth, like just to dispel like these myths that we have about like, oh, we have to go to the Bay Area for tech. No, that's not true. We can establish it here. Like, yeah, obviously it's going to take a while for us to kind of shift gears a little bit, but if we don't start now, it's never going to happen. And for me to build this database, which is my project, and we can definitely talk about that more in detail later on, but for us, it's about establishing, just changing our mindsets a little bit, changing the way that we think about what is information, how do we make it accessible. And I've noticed by talking to the community that they still have that belief of like, oh, I can't get this information because I don't have X, Y, and Z education, or I don't have this institution behind my name. And that's totally not what I want to do, especially for me who would like to aspire for a doctorate one day. But yeah, I want to be that future where I can just change the way that we think about academia, but also think about how can academia bridge the public? How can we make it more or less about this like untouched realm and make it more about community and make them feel like they can be empowered by people like us?
Yeah, because that's huge. I mean, there's such a lack of information distribution avenues, like infrastructure. I mean, you look at the city of Fontana for a specific example. The distribution of information through that city is horrendous. Awful. And we need to, as a community, understand that these tech problems are obstacles put in our way intentionally to get us distracted from the real problem.
Exactly.
And so, digging deeper into what you're doing, why don't you explain your project of what you're creating or what you're intending to prototype for the future?
So I'm creating a prototype for a database for CCAEJ. For obvious reasons, as we explained, the Inland Empire has a really poor information infrastructure. Like, information is being circulated left and right. There is no clear avenue as far as where people can get information. And the typical institutions like our local libraries and university libraries makes it more difficult for people to get that information. So then the question becomes, okay, how do we bridge that gap? Well, there is social media. I mean, it's great, don't get me wrong. We get information through social media, but it can also be, for lack of words, a clusterfuck. it really is getting more and more critical, because as these tech companies start to realize the more of the demand, then the algorithms change. Then you get more people saying, okay, maybe we need to suppress certain accounts, which is already happening. Unfortunately, I think Meta just released, like, they kind of just admitted, like, oh yeah, we're targeting local activists already.
Yeah, it was kind of like in their policy update, I think.
Right. So now it's becoming more crucial where, how do we distribute information for the greater public? And now it's getting more critical. And for me to prototype a database here for CCAEJ, I mean, I already established, and I already got a sense from doing several surveys with community members, that people really want this information. People really want to learn more about the environmental justices that are happening in the area. But the problem is that they're having a hard time locating, who do I go to? And it's becoming very clear from the survey that I conducted that they really trust the nonprofits here. They really trust the EJ groups that are really driving the momentum here. And for us to establish a prototype with you guys, it will be a huge win for you guys to bridge a gap that our local institutions and traditional avenues are not really doing well enough. So I think it's really important that we establish something and just take it from there, even if it's just little baby steps. I think for community members, they really would value this tool.
Yeah, and I like to always say this information is powerful. This information holds a lot of weight. So when we go to city council meetings and we go to these things and we have the right information, our arguments are a lot more sound.
Right.
They're a lot stronger. They're a lot more powerful when it comes to persuading, local officials to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. Sadly, it's supposed to be what they're originally doing, but they don't do it. It's okay. It's okay. They need some reminding. Steven.
Yeah.
Yvette mentioned something that I thought was very interesting that I think you might be able to give some good insight. What are the pitfalls of simply just sharing information via social media, and what troubles do you find, especially being the person who's basically in control of our socials? Do you find that the distribution of information is roadblocked at a certain point or subverted by the private companies that run them?
Well, to that point, I think there's a lot of aspects to take into consideration when it comes to those avenues. Essentially, we have roadblocks, we have intersections, and we have other varieties as well. For one thing, we know that when it comes to these companies and what they're able to essentially do to sort of manipulate the masses and stuff with their promotional items that are coming in, and the lack of ensuring that things don't essentially go their way and get promoted as much to point out even the truth perhaps, because a lot of times something that can expose these companies for what they truly are can get flagged for copyright, flagged for a variety of reasons that prevents that from happening. And then another thing to point out is that on top of those methods, there's also a variety of intentional and unintentional, how you say, for lack of a better term, fake news,
Fake news.
Yeah, fake news. But yeah, no, it has to do with a lot of the time here in the Inland Empire, we have a community that's primarily comprised of Latinos, Latinas, Latinx demographic. So we know that for what it is, a lot of our community does get their information, their news, primarily from Facebook or any sort of social media. I know for personal experience, my parents take a look at TikTok videos and Instagram reels about AI generated voices in Spanish that like essentially provide them this misinformation on a lot of things. And so like that realm of social media is not where it needs to be to ensure perhaps that all information is, how you say, certain and exact, but it is a good start, you know, because like take it from not only our nonprofit, but the variety of different nonprofits we have here in the region. All of our social media accounts work together to collaborate with one another, share posts, share stories to sort of enhance our own bubble, our own circle within this scope that we have that isn't necessarily always available to people. Like, it's crazy to me that, you know, if we really combined all the followers from all of our nonprofits, we have probably more than half of the population here in the Inland Empire. And yet it doesn't seem like many on the ground know of it. So there's like something there that's preventing that from occurring. Mm-hmm. And like, if we dive deeper into it, I'm pretty sure we'll go into some crazy conspiracy theories, but you know, that's basically how it is.
Yeah. And that's crazy because, you know, technology is all like ever evolving in this landscape, whether you're in like an older generation or the youth, this new landscape of getting your information from social media really is ever changing. And you mentioned the word or the term AI generate, and I was like, oh man, that's just like the next thing that's going to happen. And it's hard because like these things are just, we're always one step behind the curve when it comes to misinformation on the internet. And we never have the solution ready to go when it needs to be, especially for communities like EJ communities who are already having to deal with barriers in technology. Battling misinformation is really hard. So we must teach our youth how to.
I like that transition.
You know, I was trying to segue into this.
What better way to teach the old generation of new technology than teaching the youth about current issues?
Exactly. So Melanie, how does this youth program really inspire the youth for environmental justice issues?
Yeah. When Yvette was talking about the misinformation, it just really got me thinking also about how the school to warehouse pipeline is so big here.
It's huge.
And it's something I saw firsthand. I grew up here and I went to school in Rialto High. So obviously a lot of times school administration could really say, okay, like these warehouses aren't that bad because, you know, they provide jobs for our youth. And I'm like, in what world is this sustainable or even something that we want to participate in? And like, why are we emphasizing these jobs instead of going to college or going to trade school or going to community college? Like, there's opportunities here. And so when thinking about this, I also wanted to incorporate an element of like college empowerment, because going to college, going to a trade school, getting an education is really important in a way to empower you and kind of open your eyes to a lot of issues here. And as you can see, like Yvette and me both went to university, and that's just one avenue to do. And so when thinking about this, I decided to kind of create like a mentorship program. So apart from the youth learning about environmental justice, they're also going to be engaging and have a mentor who grew up here in the Inland Valley, who went to school in this area and are current college students and also involved in the environmental justice sphere. So all this is going to be able to like create some mentorship in the Inland Valley, because I think it's so important to have a mentor who you can look up to and who you can ask questions to, and not someone who's just like a counselor or something who's older than you. It's like someone who's maybe like a couple years older than you and who's going to be able to guide you with whatever dreams or aspirations you have. So that's one big part of the program. And those counselors are awesome, and they're people who I just know are going to be so excited to work with the youth because they also got involved in CCAEJ in some way or another. So that's a big part of it, and the youth are going to be engaging with community organizers, with college professors, with current research happening, all those things that's going to really elevate them and empower them to continue learning about environmental justice.
Awesome. And just for our viewers, what are the details for your program? Because I really want parents of these youth to really take advantage of this, because it is a free program. Mm-hmm. You know, we like to give a lot of free resources here at CCAEJ. So go ahead and give us the details on that.
Yeah. So the first virtual programming is already happening this week, which is super exciting. July 18th, it's going to be like from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then the following Thursday, July 26th, is going to be the other in-person program from also from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then in between the virtual programming, we're gonna have a in-person programming in Yucaipa Regional Park, and that's gonna be super exciting because we're gonna be out, we're gonna be hiking, we're gonna be cooking, we're gonna be eating s'mores, and creating some action plans, because a big part is for youth to actually get their hands dirty, kind of figure out what issue is really important to them, and create an action plan, and trying to really encourage them to become community organizers themselves, because they all have it in them, and they all have like these really powerful personal narratives, just like bringing them out and kind of connecting the dots and realizing, oh, like, hey, like I can be an organizer too. And we're working on possibly doing a trip to University of Redlands to meet with a professor who's doing a lot of great work here as well, and doing some power mapping, doing some visual data. As we talked about, data is really important. And yeah, so that's what we got so far. Hopefully people can join us for the in-person programming, because I know this is scheduled to come out later on.
It's okay. It'll be out before the in-person programming.
Okay.
So
And then hopefully this happens every year, because I really want to set the stage up so that like the next person can come and continue developing this.
most definitely. And if you want to sign up, just go to our Instagram. We have all the information there on our feed
And Linktree.
and Linktree.
Yeah.
Yvette, what is one thing you learned from your fellowship here?
Oh my God. What didn't I learn? Oh my God. I think just knowing how to bridge between EJ and tech language. That's something that I think that I hate to say it, but like sometimes data science and those who work in the field, they only see numbers. That's all they see. And I think that most of them don't really sit with the reality of what they're doing with those numbers. And the way that I really sat with that is when we went to the railway convening.
The regional rail convening, yes.
And I realized that I was one of the only, if I'm not the only person in tech in that room.
I would be willing to say you're one of two, or just by yourself.
Yeah, and just like sitting with community members that are affected daily with the situation with our railroads. Hate to say it, but warehouses are not the only issue that is affecting the Inland Empire. We are seeing a monolith of railways and trains that are affecting us as well. So just realizing and sitting with how much data is not being connected to these people that are affected, especially what was that one group, the Concerned Mothers in Long Beach. That broke my heart, just hearing, everyday women suffering from just having to take care of their children who live near railways, and they have asthma, and they're being medically gaslit, and they don't know what to do, and they're screaming bloody murder because they're like, we just want to get clean air, and no one's listening to this problem. And I'm just thinking in the back of my head, like, how is somebody in tech listening to this? How is somebody looking at these numbers that we see on Excel sheets and not think about what is the lasting impression that we're going to have when we come to policy, when we come to discussing this in academic journals, or just talking about it with our colleagues? It really left me a mark, because I don't want to say like, oh, I was disconnected, but like sometimes you just have to be in spaces like this to really sit with that reality. And I think a lot of times data scientists and those who work in the IT field don't really sit with what they're doing at times. And I think if we start encouraging more people in the tech field to really come into community spaces like this and really have them reckon with, like, yes, the privilege on one hand, but also reckon with like, dude, you have this power to change something, do it, but do it in the way that you're conscious of community. I think that could be really a huge revelation. And that's something why I got really motivated to be here and put 110 with CCAEJ, because you guys absolutely deserve a tool like this, and all EJ groups deserve to have this.
So Melanie, to wrap it up, what is one thing you learned here from CCAEJ, and just one thing you'd want to tell staff as you part?
Yeah, I'm thinking about everything. I mean, as I said before, it's one thing to learn about it, one thing to experience it. And I grew up here, so I kind of already knew. But I think one moment that really touched my heart and that really like opened my eyes was this past Saturday when I got to visit the Ortiz family because they were having a kermes and a cabalgata at their house, and they were inviting community members into their home to kind of fundraise money for their move into another part since they were displaced by Tim Howard and the warehouses there. Bloomington community has been impacted so hard by the warehouse industrial complex. So I think that moment was just so impactful to me and something I really appreciate that I got to see. And I can't even imagine like the Ortiz family like actually having to experience this every day. And I think that's just something I wish more people got to see every day and got to like talk to the people who are actually affected every day. And so I think as a fellow here, something I've just really appreciated was the opportunity to be in community and be outside of this office. Obviously, a lot of important things happen here, but what really matters is what happens out there. And CCAEJ is a company, not a company, an organization. Hold up, we're not a company. It's an organization that has a really big heart, and I can tell that they're not doing it just for a paycheck. Like, we're doing it because we have the passion, and these issues are actually affecting our families. It's affecting our loved ones. It's affecting our lungs. It's affecting, like, you know, how Steven said, like his siblings have asthma. My siblings have asthma as well. And so just all these experiences really accumulate and are really important as a fellow to really engage with.
Yvette, how are you?
I mean, I'm on the, second to last week of my fellowship. So I'm going to be departing pretty soon, which really is painful because I really enjoyed working with everyone here. I've been following CCAEJ, oh my God, since 2021 with the Jurupa Hills High School warehousing situation. Mm-hmm. That really hit home because that was, I think, the first time that I really had to sit with the reality of like, oh, a high school near my house could easily be displaced by a warehouse. And that was the first time that I think community members, at least within my neighborhood, started to really sit with this duality of like working for the warehousing industry, but also the warehousing industry is not for us. They just took over this high school that is public. It's a public school. And that's completely upsetting to hear that students have no rights to think about education, as Melanie mentioned earlier. Like this is the lived reality. Like just for me to go to Berkeley, like that's a miracle. I hate to say it that way, but it's the reality in the Inland Empire. And for me to be a fellow here, and especially coming from a quote unquote privileged background with this major that has these varying connotations in society, it's really a huge weight. It's one that I have to kind of like mediate between, okay, yes, I'm doing something that's very tangent and a lot of tech people will not understand what I'm doing, but I'm not doing it for prestige. I'm not doing it for reputation. I'm doing it because this is a lived reality that no one's really addressing and no one's really talking about it in my part of the neighborhood. And I really just want to establish like this precedent for future students to just think of tech in a different way. Like you don't have to go to Google to find happiness. You don't have to go to Meta to find these things. You can build a simple project like a database or a GSI map and think of how radical that could really change the way that the whole apparatus of what we told ourselves that we can and cannot do, and change the way that we think of the Inland Empire. That's very powerful. And for me to be able to do that with CCAEJ, I mean, I feel blessed because I've been wanting to get into this space for quite some time. I just couldn't find it in the past. And it was during COVID. So that made things very hard to get engaged. And we're, coming out of a pandemic too. Like that was even harder. So yeah. But I'm blessed to be here and just being able to contribute back. And yeah, I mean, there's no words to describe the amount of joy that I have and how much I'm going to be very sad to leave.
Shout out Shane and Steven and Joaquin and Claudia and Liz and Stacy and Oscar.
Yeah.
And our director. They've all been very welcoming, like as fellows. And I know we might be like one of the first fellows, right?
Since COVID. Yeah.
I really want to have more fellows join because I think, being in the office and like being able to eat lunch together and going out into community together is just really important. And it's really enjoyable, especially when the team is so awesome.
Exactly.
So huge thank you for being so welcoming to us.
And I'll say on behalf of everyone here at CCAEJ, it was an honor and a privilege to have you girls here and to have you create such amazing projects to share with the community, because it is paramount for us to reach people like you. It is and we are indebted to you for your work. So thank you so much for being here. You guys are awesome. You do amazing work, and you're really funny.
All the best qualities of fellows here at CCAEJ.
10 out of 10. I want to just wrap this up by saying we have a few things coming up in the CCAEJ calendar. Go ahead and like and subscribe to everything we put out. And thank you so much for listening. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And it's really time that we clear the air. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.